There is a voice inside you. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It waits. Not for permission, not for applause, but for your surrender. You call it a dream. You call it passion. But it is none of those things. It's a calling. And the difference is this: a dream lets you sleep. A calling wakes you up. A passion can be postponed. A calling will haunt you. A goal can be negotiated. A calling is all or nothing. But here's the part no one told you. You won't sacrifice for your calling. You'll sacrifice your calling. For comfort, for distractions, for people who don't believe in it the way you do. And when you do, you won't feel relief. You'll feel the ache of a voice you tried to silence. You'll look in the mirror and wonder why it all feels hollow, why your soul winces at success, why nothing you build feels like home. Because you built your life around survival instead of surrender. You built around applause instead of obedience. You built around comfort instead of calling. And now you're wondering where your fire went. Let me ask you something real. When did you start telling your calling to wait? When did you shrink your vision to fit your circumstances? When did you let fear dress up as logic and convince you that playing it safe was wisdom? When did you trade alignment for acceptance? When did you let people who gave up on their calling become the loudest voices shaping yours? The world has never been short on noise, but it has always been starved for obedience. Not religious obedience, not blind obedience. I'm talking about sacred obedience, the kind that makes no sense to anyone but you and God. The kind that makes you burn the backup plan. The kind that clears the room, cancels the party, walks away from the opportunity. Because you know that you're not here to impress anyone, you're here to answer. You want to know why you feel restless, why you keep reinventing, restarting, relapsing, doubting. Because deep down you know you've been negotiating with the version of you that was never supposed to survive this far. That version was just your scaffolding. It got you through trauma. It helped you belong. It helped you avoid rejection. But now it's robbing you, because your calling cannot share space with your coping. And every time you delay obedience, every time you tell your soul not yet, you don't just pause your purpose, you train your identity to betray it. And here's the harsh truth. No one wants to say out loud, if you won't bleed for your calling, you will slowly kill it. Not in one big moment of failure, but in 1,000 tiny rationalizations. I need more clarity. I need more money. I need their support first. I'm not ready. But readiness isn't real. Obedience is. And here's what obedience sounds like in the real world. I don't know how, but I'm moving. I'm scared, but I'm showing up anyway. They won't understand, but I'm still going. This doesn't make sense to anyone but me, and that's enough. You don't need more podcasts. You don't need another mastermind. You don't need another year of preparing to prepare. You need one ruthless decision. Who are you going to obey, your comfort or your calling? Because you can't follow both. They live in opposite directions. One leads you to applause. The other leads you through silence, through stillness, through sacrifice. But on the other side, identity, peace, power that doesn't depend on followers, filters, or validation. And you won't find that in books. You'll find it in becoming. And becoming always begins in the fire. You weren't born to remain undecided. The most dangerous version of you isn't the one who failed. It's the one who hesitated. It's the you who knows what they're supposed to become and keeps making excuses anyway. Because hesitation is slow death. It rots your confidence from the inside. It teaches your brain that you can't be trusted to follow through. And the longer you hesitate, the more your soul starts to shut down. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Your hunger fades. Your fire dims. You start convincing yourself you never wanted it that bad. You tell yourself, maybe this isn't the season. But seasons don't change purpose. They test it. They shake you to see if you'll stay planted, or abandon the soil just because it doesn't feel like spring. Let me tell you what obedience really looks like. It looks like showing up in the dark with no applause. It looks like building when nobody is watching. It looks like investing when you don't know how it'll pay off. It looks like discipline when emotion is gone. It looks like saying no to comfort and yes to clarity. And clarity never screams. It whispers. That's why most people miss it. They want their purpose to arrive like a lightning strike. But purpose moves like a shadow following your decision, your focus, your daily patterns. Because your calling isn't revealed in a moment, it's built through momentum. You want to unlock identity. You want to live a life that doesn't shake when the world does. Then build habits your excuses don't survive in. Routines that don't ask for permission from your past. Standards that are louder than your self-doubt. Because here's the truth. Self-trust is the byproduct of repeated alignment. Not one breakthrough, not one journal prompt, but consistent days where your actions echo what your spirit already knows. That's how you become undeniable. Not to others, to yourself. You want power. Then give your word to yourself and keep it. The most magnetic people you'll ever meet aren't the loudest. They're the most aligned. You can feel it in their posture, in their presence, in the way they say no without apologizing, in the way they move when no one is watching. Because they're not trying to be liked. They're trying to stay lit. You keep waiting for the world to recognize your potential. But the world doesn't move for potential. It moves for decision. It bends to commitment. It responds to identity. So ask yourself, what would it look like to live as someone who's already chosen? Not preparing, not planning, not perfecting. Chosen. Chosen to build. Chosen to move. Chosen to speak. Chosen to rise even when your past keeps trying to pull you back. Because the world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your permission. Permission to go first. Permission to get it wrong. Permission to rise without validation. Permission to walk into your assignment before anyone claps for it. This is not the season to blend in. This is not the year to half show up. And if your heart is still beating, that means your calling is still active. It hasn't expired. It hasn't forgotten you. But it will not wait forever. Not because it's cruel, but because it was never meant to live in delay. Every time you ignore it, you chip away at your own peace. Because nothing is more exhausting than living a life that looks right on the outside and feels wrong on the inside. You don't need to change the whole world. You just need to change your response. Stop asking if you're worthy. You're already called. The question is, will you pick up? Your calling is not waiting for your comfort. It's waiting for your courage. Not talent, not timing, not a perfectly crafted plan. Just the courage to begin without guarantees. The world you want to build is on the other side of one decision you've been postponing. And I know you've heard this before, but hearing changes nothing. Obedience is not a thought, it's a pattern, a practiced rhythm where your actions teach your nervous system that you're no longer available for fear-based delay. You want a new life. You don't need to pray harder. You need to move louder. Discipline is not the enemy, it's the doorway. Because you can't step into destiny with the same patterns that protect mediocrity. You've already tasted what playing small gets you: regret, overthinking, envy of those who were simply brave enough to start. But this is the version of you who doesn't flinch. This is the you who no longer needs to explain your decisions to people who've never walked a mile with your fire. This is the you who builds when it's hard, who shows up without applause, who doesn't need hype, because you've trained yourself to be governed by conviction, not comfort. And that's what discipline really is. It's not punishment. It's alignment under pressure. It's the spine of your purpose. It's the muscles of your identity. It's the armor that protects you from the seduction of easy. Because every day you wake up, you're in a battle between the version of you that's hungry for transformation and the version that's terrified of letting go. And if you don't train your mind with intention, you will be trained by your fears on autopilot. The world will feed you alternatives. Be productive. Be liked. Be busy. Be smart. But you weren't called to be busy. You were called to be bold. And boldness doesn't ask, "Is this the perfect moment?" It asks, "What decision would my future self thank me for today?" You keep asking for signs, but what if your discomfort is the sign? What if your frustration is feedback that your current lifestyle no longer fits your assignment? What if your delay is the only thing standing between you and the version of you that doesn't just dream, but executes? Let that land. There is a version of you who already lives the life you crave. Not because they're luckier, but because they traded excuses for execution. They rewired their story. They dropped the narrative of maybe later. They stopped waiting for clarity and became the kind of person who creates it. You want clarity. Move. You want peace. Decide. You want breakthrough. Burn the backup plan, because your backup plan is the graveyard of your original vision. Every time you run to it, you bury the power of what could be. You can't be loyal to your comfort and faithful to your calling at the same time. Something has to die, and it better not be your purpose. Let your old story die. Let the need for approval die. Let the addiction to certainty die. That's what sacrifice really means. Not pain for pain's sake, but pain with purpose. Discomfort as initiation. Resistance as sharpening. Because life will test you. Not to break you, but to make sure you're serious. And if you keep folding every time it gets hard, you don't need more talent. You need more grit. You don't need to manifest harder. You need to move differently. Discipline isn't a trait, it's a choice. One that says, "I will not abandon myself this time. I will not defer my future to my fears. I will not apologize for walking in obedience." You know what happens when you live like that? You stop needing motivation. You stop needing permission. You stop needing to be rescued, because you realize you are the interruption. You are the evidence. You are the one your bloodline has been waiting on. At some point you stop asking, "Am I enough for this calling?" and you start declaring, "This calling was made for someone like me." Not because you feel it every day, but because you've chosen to become the kind of person who doesn't need to feel ready to act. You see, readiness is a lie sold to the hesitant. But identity is forged in the fire of repetition. Every morning you rise before the doubt has a chance to speak. Every time you do the hard thing without applause, every time you break the pattern instead of repeating it, you're not just being productive. You are becoming, and the becoming is louder than the fear. This is the great misunderstanding of purpose. People think it comes to the qualified, but the truth is, purpose finds the one who refuses to back down. And it doesn't reward perfection. It rewards endurance. You want legacy? Then sacrifice like someone building a future you won't be around to enjoy. Live like your bloodline depends on it, because it does. You were never just building a career. You're building character that echoes beyond you. You're building foundations that won't crack under pressure. You're building standards that your children will one day live inside of. That's why you can't afford to quit. That's why comfort isn't an option. That's why you don't fold when things get heavy. Because your consistency isn't just about what you get, it's about who gets to follow after you. Every time you show up without a cheerleader, every time you hold the line while everyone else collapses, every time you forgive, faster move, cleaner, think sharper, love deeper, you are etching something unshakable into the earth. You become the standard. You become the blueprint. You become the evidence that self-respect is louder than chaos. And I'll tell you something most won't say. You're going to lose some things for this. You're going to lose comfort. You're going to lose casual friendships. You're going to lose the version of you that was tolerated but never trusted. But what you gain clarity. You gain internal peace. You gain the kind of self-respect that no external validation can touch. You gain the right to walk into any room and not shrink, not posture, but just be. Rooted, resolved, refined by the fire you walked through and didn't run from. That's self-mastery. It doesn't come from how much you know. It comes from how much you've integrated. It's when you stop reacting and start responding. It's when your silence has more gravity than someone else's noise. It's when your no is a boundary, not a debate. It's when your yes costs you something and you give it anyway. Because deep down you know the price of purpose will always be the old you, the confused you, the overthinking you, the self-doubting, over-explaining, always negotiating version of you, that version. It doesn't survive your next level. So stop grieving what was never meant to follow you into the promise. Let the old you go. Let the delay go. Let the disbelief go. This is the version of you that doesn't beg for alignment, they become it. This is the version of you that stops seeking signs because they are the sign. This is the version of you that doesn't wait for the world to shift because you shift the room just by deciding to walk in with your identity intact. No more excuses. No more half-built bridges. No more loyalty to confusion just because it's familiar. From this moment on, you don't just believe in your calling. You honor it with your patterns. You guard it with your attention. You feed it with the fuel of your discipline. Because the truth is, if you won't sacrifice for your calling, you will sacrifice your calling. And you're not here to live a life of almost. You're here to live a life of evidence. So now the question isn't, can I do it? The question is, what am I willing to lose so I never have to lose this again? You've carried the burden of almost long enough. You've flirted with greatness, but tonight you marry it. You don't owe the world another version of yourself that hides. You owe the world the version that builds, that bleeds with purpose, that burns the exit and walks straight into the fire. Because your legacy isn't written in words. It's written in what you refuse to walk away from. No more waiting for confidence. You move anyway. No more waiting for support. You build anyway. No more waiting for certainty. You become the proof. Discipline is your language now. Conviction is your rhythm. Sacrifice is your signature. So write it bold, write it loud, write it in scars and sweat, and standards too high for the world to understand. This is your line in the sand. This is the moment the old you dies quietly and the real you finally wakes up. And when it gets hard tomorrow, come back here. Rewatch this. Remember who you decided to be tonight. Now, if this message lit a fire in you, don't let it go out. Like the video. Share it with the one friend who needs this truth. And drop a comment below with just 2 words, I'm ready. Because if you are, the world won't know what hit it.